Hey everyone, welcome back to English Talking Today. I'm Emily, and I'm so glad you're here with me. I want to share a story with you that's incredibly close to my heart. This isn't about grammar rules or vocabulary lists. It's not a magical speak English in 30 days trick. Instead, it's about the real, raw journey of learning a language, the pain, the promise, and the power that comes with it. If you've ever felt too scared to speak, or if you've ever stayed silent in a room full of confident people, this story is for you. It's the story of a young man named Liam, who went from being too afraid to say a single sentence to someone who now speaks confidently and freely. The most amazing part? He did it without a teacher, without a coach, and without friends who spoke English. All he had was a reason, a fire, and a promise he made to himself. This is his journey, and it might just be yours too. Part 1. The Promise. Liam grew up in a small town where people didn't have big dreams. His father was a mechanic and his mother worked as a housemaid. They didn't have much money, so there were no smartphones, no internet, and no English books at home. The family only spoke their local language. For Liam, English felt like a language for the rich. He'd see people on TV speaking fluently and smiling, and he'd always think, that will never be me. In school, Liam was good at reading English, but he would freeze when the teacher asked him to speak. His mouth would go dry and his heart would beat fast. He remembers one day being asked to say just one sentence, "My name is Liam, and I want to be a teacher." He couldn't do it. He just stood there, shaking, while the whole class laughed. That day, something broke inside him. It wasn't just because of the laughter, but because he knew he had something to say and couldn't find the words. That night, walking home alone, all he could hear was the sound of people laughing. He looked at his reflection in a shop window and whispered a promise to himself, "One day I will speak English. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how hard it is. I'll do it." He didn't tell anyone, not his parents or his friends. It was his secret mission. From that day on, he decided he would train himself, with no coaching, no teachers, just him and his voice. It was a quiet, lonely promise made by a 19-year-old boy who had no idea what he was doing, but who had a decision stronger than his fear, to never stay silent again. Part 2. The Struggle Begins. After making that promise, Liam felt strong for about one day. The next morning, he stood in front of the mirror and tried to speak, but nothing came out. Even though he was alone, he felt watched and judged by himself. He tried to say a simple sentence, "How are you?" but it felt like he was pushing a heavy rock out of his mouth. He realized then that learning English wasn't just about words, it was about fear. One day, he used his father's old phone to record himself speaking. He tried to say, "My name is Liam. I want to learn English." When he played it back, he wanted to delete it immediately. His voice sounded broken, slow, and embarrassed, with pauses in the wrong places and incorrect pronunciation. He started crying, not because his English was bad, but because he was hearing his fear for the first time. He thought about quitting, believing that English might not be for people like him. But then he remembered the promise he had made. He decided to try again, but this time he changed his approach. He didn't try to speak perfect English. He just tried to speak one sentence with feeling. Looking in the mirror, he said, "I want to be better." That simple, emotional sentence became his daily habit. He would wake up 15 minutes early, lock the bathroom door, and speak to himself out loud. He'd say things like, "Today is going to be a good day," or "English is not my enemy." He was still silent in school and avoided conversations, but something had changed inside him. He had started his war, and every sentence he spoke alone was a tiny victory. He learned a painful truth. People don't talk enough about what it feels like to try your best and still be invisible. 2 weeks after he started his mirror practice, a man asked him for directions at a grocery shop. Liam had practiced questions like this, but in real life, his mouth wouldn't move. He shook his head and said nothing. He felt crushed, wanting to throw away his notebook and quit. The next morning, however, he stood in front of the mirror again. Not because he felt strong, but because he had promised himself he would not stop, even if he had to fail 100 times. That's when he learned a crucial lesson. Fluency isn't about speaking fast, it's about being brave every day. He decided he would speak English every single day, even if it was just for 5 minutes and even if it was broken. This was the beginning of his English ritual. Part 3. The Small Wins. Liam didn't follow any big program or watch expensive tutorials. He simply started talking to himself in the mirror, picking small topics like his school day or his favorite memory. He created his own practice system with 3 daily speaking zones. Zone 1. Morning self-talk. For 2 minutes while brushing his teeth, he'd say empowering sentences like, "I am not afraid," or "I'm strong." Zone 2. Evening mirror practice. This was his main training time, lasting 10 to 15 minutes. He would stand in front of the mirror and talk about a simple topic. He knew that fluent people weren't perfect, they were just consistent. Zone 3. Whisper practice. Before sleeping, he'd whisper 3 to 5 sentences about anything, like a confession or a dream. After about 3 weeks, something strange started to happen. He began thinking in English without even trying, planning what to say the next day in his thoughts. This time, when he cried, it was out of happiness because he felt like he was winning. He was no longer a boy trying to speak English. He was becoming a boy who lived in English. He realized that thinking in English wasn't a miracle. It was the result of consistent daily effort and an emotional connection to the language. He still made mistakes and had an accent, but he didn't care because English was no longer a subject. It was his language of growth. He had done it all alone at home, without a teacher, because he deeply believed that if he spoke every day, his brain and confidence would follow. After weeks of speaking alone, he felt stronger, but only inside. His English was a secret, and he knew it was time to face the real world. He found a community center that had free weekend sessions for English practice. He was terrified of being laughed at, but one Sunday, he walked there alone, his legs feeling heavy. He found a group of 7 or 8 people, all nervous and making mistakes, but no one was laughing. This gave him hope. When the coordinator asked him to introduce himself, his heart pounded and his palms got wet. But he remembered his mirror practice and the promise he had made. He stood up, took a slow breath, and said, "Hello, my name is Liam. I am 19 years old. I love English. I want to speak better. I am learning alone." After a 3-second silence, everyone clapped. They clapped not because it was perfect, but because it was real. That was his first public win. He had spoken English in front of people and survived. He started going every Sunday, challenging himself to say one more sentence each week. This bravery led to another small victory. He helped a foreign tourist at the same grocery shop where he had once frozen. The tourist said, "Your English is good," and even though Liam only smiled back, inside he felt like he was flying. He wrote in his diary that day, "Today I spoke to a stranger. He understood me. That means I am not invisible anymore." This was a powerful shift. He stopped being ashamed of not being fluent yet and started to win. Part 4. From Silence to Strength. About 3 months into his journey, Liam applied for a job at a small marketing company that required basic English communication skills. This was his chance to practice real English, earn money, and make his parents proud. He prepared for 4 nights, rehearsing his introduction and possible interview questions in front of the mirror. When his name was called, he walked into the interview room, but when asked to tell them about himself, his mind went blank. Every word he had practiced disappeared, and he was the same scared boy from school again. The silence felt like a storm, and his broken sentence, "I want job because I like learn," showed his fear. The rest of the interview was just as bad. He left feeling like all his effort was a lie. He felt like a fraud and wanted to quit. But then something small saved him. A note he had taped to his desk on the first day of his journey. It read, "No matter how slow you go, as long as you don't stop, you're still winning." He realized his real enemy wasn't English. It was his fear of being judged. He promised himself that he would never stop just because he failed. The next time he went to his community group, he told them about his failed interview, how he froze, and how he almost quit, but then he said, "I'm still here. I still want to speak, and I will not stop." The group clapped louder than ever before, and one man told him, "You didn't fail, Liam. You grew because now you're honest." That's real progress. These words healed him. He started turning English into a lifestyle, not just a subject, by doing small, real-life English actions like asking strangers for directions and reading paragraphs out loud. He was no longer just stronger, he was wiser. He understood that every time he spoke, he was fighting his fear. He didn't need to sound perfect. He needed to sound brave. This new mindset changed everything. The community group coordinator asked him to give a welcome speech at an open English speaking event. Liam froze, but when he looked in his mirror, his oldest friend and teacher, his reflection smiled back. It was a signal that you're never truly ready. You just speak anyway. On the day of the event, with about 40 people in the hall, Liam walked to the stage holding the microphone. He remembered that he wasn't there as a perfect speaker, but as a living example of what's possible. He began his speech by saying, "Good evening, everyone. My name is Liam. A few months ago, I couldn't say even this line without fear. But today, I stand here because I didn't give up." He told them his entire story. His mirror practice, his failures, the frozen interview, and the nights he cried. He spoke from his heart, not from a script. He told them that fluency is about sounding like yourself without fear. When he finished speaking, the room was silent, followed by a deep, emotional applause. Outside, he cried tears of accomplishment. He had gone from a boy who hid in silence to one who spoke with truth, power, and freedom. He was no longer learning English. He was living in English. Now, I want to share some final lessons from Liam's journey with you. Your fear is real, but it's not permanent. Every sentence you speak makes it smaller. You don't need fancy words. You need honest practice. English is a tool for freedom, the freedom to express, grow, and be heard. You will fail, freeze, and forget, but that doesn't mean you're not learning. Speak every day, even for just 5 minutes, even to yourself. Because one day, you'll speak to someone and they'll understand you, not just your words, but your entire journey. And in that moment, you'll know it was all worth it. So, if you felt something in this story, let it be the spark for your own journey. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. Thank you for listening.